French President François Hollande said on Saturday the attacks in Paris that killed 127 people were an act of war organized from abroad by Islamic State with internal help. The leader's statement follows an inquiry by a group of investigators that were ordered to learn more about those responsible for the attacks.
Fellow citizens, what happened yesterday in Paris and Saint Denis near the Fellow citizens, what happened yesterday in Paris and Saint-Denis near the Stade de France was an act of war. Faced with war, the country has to take appropriate steps. It's an act of war which was committed by a terrorist army, Daesh, an Islamist army, against France, against the values we uphold throughout the world, against who we are, a free country, which speaks to the whole planet.
Police officers and forensic experts inspected the body and suicide belt of one of the Paris-attacked suicide bombers while searching for evidence following multiple attacks across the French capital. Authorities said 8 of the suspect assailants died after detonating suicide bombs. Deadly attacks in Paris forced a shift in the focus on Syrian peace talks on Saturday to the fight against Islamic State, with Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov urging more international action against the terrorist group.
We talked first of all about the events in Paris, which follow on events in Beirut and events in Iraq. And we are in absolute and total agreement that these kinds of attacks are the most vile, horrendous, outrageous, unacceptable acts on the planet, that under any category, we don't know who did it, but they are acts of terror. So we are witnessing a kind of medieval and modern fascism at the same time, which has no regard for life, which seeks to destroy and create chaos and disorder and fear. And the one thing we can say to those people is that what they do in this is stiffen our resolve, all of us, to fight back, to hold people accountable, and to stand up for rule of law, and which is exactly what we are here to do.
Yeah, I fully subscribe to what John just said. President of the Russian Federation expressed his solidarity with the French people, our outrage at what happened in Paris, and let's not forget that there were terrorist attacks taking a lot of lives in Beirut and in Iraq in the last few days. I think we have to strongly reiterate that there should be no tolerance vis-à-vis terrorists, and just like there is no justification for terrorist acts, which is the position of the Security Council, I believe, as John said, there could be no justification for us not doing much more to defeat ISIL, Nusra, and the like. And I hope that this meeting as well would allow us to move forward.
As extremely concerning is how Camilo González describes the latest report on paramilitarism, released by the Institute for Peace Studies in the past, of which he is the head. The investigation reveals the presence of at least 14 paramilitary structures in over 330 municipalities across Colombia.
There is a recurring presence of those groups that are reorganizing in many areas of Colombia, and they're taking initiatives to seize further territories in the wake of eventual disarmament of the FARC. They are preparing themselves for the post-conflict by gaining territory. That is the alert we are issuing.
Despite the so-called AUC paramilitarist demobilization carried out between 2003 and 2006 under former President Álvaro Uribe, the report exposes that paramilitarism is still alive and strong, a point on which another report by the Center for Historic Memory coincides.
There is a new generation of paramilitaries much more degraded. There are rearmaments and recidivism. The paramilitary phenomenon has not been overcome and beyond the armed groups. Paramilitarism is embedded in all dynamics of access to power, in political alliances, and in legal and illegal economic muscles.
For analysts, the resurgence of paramilitarism has to do first with the government's failure to recognize that after the demobilization, many of the structures have prevailed, and secondly, with its failure to admit that paramilitarism prevails with the connivance of economic and political powers.
They keep features of the former paramilitaries, such as their infiltration in politics, state institutions, and military forces. In general, nowadays, paramilitary maintains the same modus operandi. It is just that currently, their focal point is the economic businesses.
The researchers agreed that the peace negotiations, particularly the issue of a definitive ceasefire and the FARC disarmament, must include the government's commitment to tackle paramilitarism, not only in its armed structure, but in its political and economic ones too. Natalia Margarita, Telesur, Bogotá.
A series of analysts are denouncing Alberto Fujimori for interfering in politics. The former head of state is in prison for crimes against humanity. The claims have emerged after the convict gave an unauthorized interview to a foreign newspaper where he supports the candidacy of his daughter Keiko, and after it was revealed that he received 653 visits in prison only in the last 3 months.
It should not happen anywhere on the planet that a prisoner for very grave crimes receives hundreds of visits in a few months. That means he receives around 10 to 20 visits per day, turning him into a political actor who promotes campaigns, who probably offers posts and filters proposals to his daughter and her party on how to campaign.
Members of Fujimori's party were not available for comment. Public opinion is polarized on the interference of the felon in politics, and polls show 1 out of every 3 Peruvians will be voting for his daughter.
I think it is very good that he gets visits. He probably did something good, and that is why people are visiting, for his good work. He should not have any privilege, and he should be treated like any common person who has committed a crime and has been sent to jail. He's an electoral campaign because his party members continually go to consult him on what to do.
Elections will be taking place in April of next year, but already critics of the Fujimoris fear that their return to power might also mean a return to the time when they murdered tens of thousands of people and plunged public institutions into widespread corruption. Rael Mora, Telesur, Peru.
Facts that have marked the course of history. Productions designed in the English language and made for the English-speaking world. This is Documentary. Watch it on telesur.net/English. Telesur, wherever the news, you'll be there.